Good morning, everyone. So, a little different today, and I didn't plan on doing this right now, but I didn't want to waste time because I have to sit here because the van wouldn't start, and so I have to. I am charging the jump starter. Honestly, I would not travel anymore without a jump starter. But because the car, the check engine light came on, and another thing I would not travel without is a code reader. So I could not wait to get back to the van, because that's where I have my code reader, to hook it in and see what it said, because then you can kind of get an idea. But this one, it's PO301, and so yeah, I'm gonna have to get that in. So I have to drive the van today. I have a lot of stuff to take care of. It's Sunday, but yeah, I accidentally left the door open. So it's interesting here in Minnesota now. It's been beautiful. It's been perfect weather, but last night it was hot in the van, so I left the side door open just a tiny bit, just to get the air ventilation in here, and the battery ran out. And then I was wondering why my heater wasn't working, because then in the middle of the night it was freezing, and I fell asleep because I was up at 3 yesterday to unload truck at Walgreens. And so I fell asleep and I was out. I didn't even wash my face or anything. Woke up this morning. I had tried to turn the heater on. I'm also out of propane, so I got all that going for me. The car's got the check engine light on. The jump starter is dead, and I'm out of propane. So there you go. Oh, van life. You know, you see all that cinematic stuff. This is the reality of van life. But I do, I have a video coming up. I'll do it this week. You know how I did like what I lost or gave up for van life, but I will have this week what I gained from van life. Other than that, so if you don't know, you know, if you haven't been with me for long, I used to do like these, they were like called blackout screen videos, and it's where I just talk, and usually when I felt like talking about something deep, I said it was like confession. I grew up Catholic, and you go in the confessional box and it's all dark, and you're telling all your secrets. And I'll bring that back if you guys want to. I know sometimes it's nice just to close your eyes and not have to look at anything, and you know, just focus on what somebody's saying. But those two, when I was traveling, it was like when I was in a certain headspace, that's when I did those. But if you don't know, if I'm listening to a podcast or reading a book, or it's always like true crime, you know, biographies, you know, something like that. And I had wanted to start like a true crime, you know, YouTube channel before, but yeah, like I have the time. But I ran across some like mysteries of people who travel and stuff like that, and I thought, because I love stories, I've talked about this before, and I think it's why I like to do like the bikes and stuff like that. Like it's kind of, you know, has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an end, and for me, and then the editing is fun for me. I like that part of it, putting music to stuff like that. So I love stories. Sorry if you hear stuff. So I thought that I would start telling stories about people who like have gone missing or something's happened while they traveled, and yeah, and just give you something different. And for me, like I said, you know, the whole YouTube thing, I have found, especially what I'm going through in my own life, you know, what we're all going through, it's stressful, is that I just want to do what, not I want to do, but that makes me want to do videos. And so, and I'm not worried about the algorithm, I'm not worried about followers, I'm not worried about all that. So yeah, so, and I always do things separate so that if you don't like something, you don't have to watch it. But this is a long introduction just to know that these will be popping up on my channel here and there. And yeah, and so I researched and I put out a format, like a script. I was going to put it on my phone. They have a thing where you can put a script on your phone. I've done a teleprompter before. I used to be an anchor at a small news station here in Minnesota. But it kind of takes away from the true storytelling of it, I think. So I am just going to like tell this story and see how it goes. It's my first one, so give me a little grace, okay? All right, so here we go. So the story I'm going to talk about today is about Glen and Bessie Hyde. And this story, it's about their disappearance. And this story is from, they disappeared in 1928. So this was a long time ago. But it intrigued me because it's while they were traveling and they've never been found. So Glen and Bessie Hyde met in 1927 on a boat ride to Los Angeles. Bessie was a fine art student at the California School of Fine Arts, and Glen was an Idaho farmer. At the time, Bessie was 24. She was born in 1905, and Glen was born in 1998. So she was 24 at the time, so I think that would make him about 31. So I couldn't find information about why they both were on the ship to LA, but because it said that he was a farmer, so doesn't sound like he was going to college there. Maybe he was taking a trip or something, but they did meet on this boat, headed to Los Angeles. And the interesting part is that Bessie was already married. So they really hit it off on this boat ride, and I'm assuming they stayed in contact after that, and they ended up getting married on April 12th, 1928, a day after Bessie's divorce was finalized. And one of the things about Glen was that he loved to travel, and that had been since his childhood. And one of the things he loved to do was he loved to get out on the water. And in 1919, him and his friend Jess, I think it's Newbaker, took a canoe trip through the rivers of British Columbia and the Pacific Northwest. And this canoe trip was for 6 months. This trip was a success, so Glen decided to keep following his passion and start to do trips. And he decided to go on a trip with his sister. And in 1926, him and his sister Jean sailed down the Salmon and Snake Rivers. Him and his sister Jean didn't get much acclaim for traveling down the Salmon and Snake Rivers because I guess it was pretty much, commonplace that people did that. But in this time, fueled his passion to go riverboating. And it seems like from what I was reading and looking at is that Glen wanted to make some sort of name for himself in riverboating. He would tell Bessie about all this, and when you're talking about something that's your passion, how somebody else can feel the excitement for you and kind of get passionate about it with you, especially somebody who's your husband. So Bessie was in awe of Glen's passion about this, and it won her heart over. And so for their honeymoon, guess what Glen wanted to do? Yeah, you guessed it. Usually if you think a honeymoon, you'd want to, do something relaxing, spend time with your new significant other. But no, Glen wanted to run the Colorado River. Oh, but not just that. Glen wanted to break a record. So they were going to take off in October on this honeymoon river trip. And Glen built, it's called a sweep scow. So it's a wooden boat, and it's usually over 20 feet long. He made that in Green River, Utah, and he wanted this trip where he was attempting a speed paddle record through the canyon of the Colorado River. And on top of that, he wanted Bessie to come along so she could be the first woman to raft through the Grand Canyon. So it seems like if Glen was living in this day and age, he would be a big influencer somewhere. It seems like he really didn't do it just for the enjoyment of it, but for the sport of it, that he really wanted to kind of get on the map for this. And not only him, but he was taking his new wife along. And from what I read about Bessie, there's not much about them before all this, but that they called her like bohemian, that she, you know, she went to fine art school, and so it didn't seem like she was as sporty as Glen, and it seemed like she was more on the artsy side and Glen was more on the adventure side. And then on top of the speed record, the paddling speed record, and Bessie being the first woman, they wanted to break another record, or I'll say Glen, that they wanted to run every rapid, which was not normal. I guess the usual way to run a boat down, well, the Colorado River, but any river, it was called to line the boat, where over the rapids you would have people on the side like with ropes and kind of guide you over the rapids. It had never been known to just like go straight through all the rapids. So on October 22nd, 1928, they had everything they needed in the boat. It was well stocked, and they headed on their 600-mile trip down the river to Needles, California. And in November 1928, according to an article, they were actually on a record-setting pace. So they had been on the river for 26 days when they reached Bright Angel Creek, which is on the south rim of the canyon, which was a great pace because they only had about 3 weeks left to reach Needles, California, which was their intended destination. So when they reached Bright Angel Creek, they were on Bright Angel Trail, and they met a famed photographer, Emery Kolb. So at the time, you know, people knew that they were trying to set these records. So, you know, the press and everything were following them. So they were well known at this time that they were trying to set these records. And they were actually on par to set all these records. The Hydes arrived at Kolb's studio November 15th, 1928, and it said that Bessie was tired from the trip, and Kolb had said, you know, well, why don't you stay with me for the winter, and then was going to help them to tell them about all the dangers that they had coming up on the next leg of their trip. So they didn't take him up on his offer to stay for the winter, but it's assumed that they did stay with him for, you know, probably a night or so. And it is said that Bessie told Kolb that she had already dealt with like Glen falling overboard, and, you know, she wasn't a very big woman. She was pretty petite, and, you know, she would have to throw a rope to him. And mind you, this is a river, these are rapids, and that there were times that she didn't think that she was going to be able to get him back in the boat. And here is, it's weird, it's interesting, it's crazy, and I don't think anybody knows why, unless maybe he was trying to set another record. But Bessie told Kolb that they weren't traveling with any life preservers, and he was appalled. So again, the only thing that I can think of is that it was just another record on top of all the other ones that Glen wanted to make, that they did it, you know, continuously and even without life preservers. And it's kind of sad that, you know, Bessie was not, you know, a proficient rafter, it sounded like. And so to put her in all these dangers, you know, for something that he wanted accolades for, it doesn't seem like she was that type of person. So Kolb said that he had offered them many times to like, please take life preservers. And it said that they looked at each other and smiled and said that they wouldn't eat them because they were excellent swimmers. And he persisted and asked, you know, hey, take an inner tube, take something. And they would not take anything from him, you know, any help, any preservers, nothing. So Kolb let them go, and they got back in the boat, and rafted around the bend, and that is the last time that Bessie and Glen were seen. The last day they were seen was November 18th, 1928. And then weeks went by, and people were anticipating, their arrival in Needles, California. Like, their family knew, again, I think the press knew, and they never made it. They didn't show up. Weeks later, they didn't show up. So they organized a search crew, and they found their boat intact at a place near, it was called Diamond Creek, and it was just floating, but everything was in it. Bessie had a camera, she had a diary, they had food, and everything was in there except for Bessie and Glen, and they could not find them. Bessie's last diary entry was made November 30th, so that was 12 days after they left Emery Cove, and it said it didn't, I couldn't find like what they exactly said, but it said that there was no like urgency or anything like that, just a regular diary entry, like nothing was amiss. So Glen's father, Roland, they were 2 weeks overdue in Needles, California, which was their final destination. And his father, Roland, put together the largest search party that the Grand Canyon has ever seen. Emery Cove, the photographer that they had stayed with, even came to join the search party. The searchers scoured the canyon, and Bessie and Glen, their bodies were never found. It's assuming that, they were going over the rapids, and again, they had no lines, they had no life preservers, they had no help. And I've been whitewater rafting myself, and I have fallen out of the boat, and honestly, I was panicked because there's a current was going against me, and I'm trying to get to the boat, but I had multiple people like, throwing me ropes and, getting back on. It's thought that both of them have fallen over, and then the boat just continued down, and then that's where they found the boat resting. So that's the disappearance of Bessie and Glen Hyde. It's, something like that, like where they're never found. Of course, people are intrigued, and it becomes myth and lore. There was actually an Unsolved Mysteries episode. Do you remember Unsolved Mysteries? On November 29th of 1987. So story still continues. You can Google it and it comes up, and that's where I found a lot of my information. In there have been many theories to what happened to Bessie and Glen. 1976, Emery Cove, the photographer, passed away, and they found a skeleton in his boathouse. They thought at first that that was Glen, and maybe that he had shot Glen because he was in love with Bessie, but they had only met for like a day or a short time. So, but it was proven to be that was not Glen, and that was not the case. Another theory is that Bessie was just tired of Glen and tired of the rafting and her new husband, which was really new, and that she killed him. I mean, that's still possible. We don't know. And in 1976, a skeleton was found with a bullet in the head, and it was thought to be Glen, kind of same size stuff as Glen would be, but it was proven to be that those were not Glen's remains. And this one's interesting. In 1971, a woman named Elizabeth Cutler said that she was Bessie, and that she stabbed Glen. They had gotten in a fight and she stabbed him, and then she just went on to live a whole different life. But then later on, she denied that claim. And probably the most interesting one, there was a woman named Georgie Clark. She was a pioneering river rafter, and she was the first woman to own a commercial rafting company in the Grand Canyon, and it was rumored that she was Bessie Hyde. And she died in 1992, and the weirdest thing is that when she died, the Hyde's marriage certificate was found in her lingerie drawer. And also her birth certificate, she had been married a couple times. Her name was Georgie Clark, but her birth certificate said her name was Betsy D. Ross. So her first real name was Bessie. So nobody knows why she changed her first name from Bessie to Georgie. And she had a daughter, but her daughter tragically passed away in a bicycle accident, so there was nobody to like talk to. Historians have discounted this claim that she's Bessie Hyde. But in the end, only the Colorado River knows what happened to the newlyweds Bessie and Glen Hyde, and they have never been found. So, I don't know. I love to tell stories like this, especially ones that have mysteries to them. And, you know, when I do it in the future, it'll always be about somebody who's been traveling or, you know, on an adventure like I go on. Nothing too scary, I won't do it. But let me know if you like this. I'm sure I'll get better at this and have a better setup than being on a busy street here so you can hear all that. I just was stuck back here in the van, and I thought, well, instead of, you know, wasting time on my phone, I might as well just do this now and yeah, put it out there and see how it goes. So you know what to do. Go out and make an adventure, no matter how big or how small. You have to sell everything and move into a van. I did that, but you can go river rafting down a river, but you know what? Bring life preservers, okay? Go call someone you love, and as Joyce says, tell them that you love them, and don't you dare forget your magic. Okay, I'm gonna go jump Charlie now. Okay, I will see you in the next one. Bye.